Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. It started like any other Thursday, coffee warm, sky clear, road familiar. But 15 minutes from home, a shiny new gate blocked the only path to my land. 2 smug guards, 1 bold lie, and just like that, a quiet farm turned into ground zero for a war against the HOA from hell. I was about 15 minutes from home when I first noticed something was wrong. I just picked up a load of irrigation fittings and a new diesel pump from a farm supply place in town. The weather was decent, the coffee in my thermos still warm, and I was even humming a little. Just a normal Thursday, until I turned off the county highway onto the narrow drive that served my family's land for over 60 years and slammed on the brakes. There it was. A brand new set of gleaming silver and black automatic security gates standing smack in the middle of the road, right where the pavement narrowed into the tree line. Thick posts anchored into concrete, a keypad box mounted on the left, and an iron private road residents only sign welded right into the frame. I stared at it for a second, thinking maybe I was hallucinating from too much black coffee and not enough patience. Then I saw them. 2 men in dark gray uniforms stood to the side of the gate, leaning on an HOA-branded pickup with blinking amber lights. One of them had a clipboard. The other was scanning my license plate with a handheld device. The bigger one, stocky, mid-40s, military cut, raised a hand and signaled me to stop completely. I did, engine idling, window down halfway. "Good afternoon, sir," he said, voice firm, not exactly unfriendly, but definitely not casual. "This is a restricted roadway, residents only. Please turn around." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "This is private property under the jurisdiction of Maple Creek Ridge Homeowners Association. Access is limited to HOA-approved vehicles." I let out a short, dry laugh. "I live at the end of this road. My name's Clayton Reed. That farm back there? Been in my family since before your damn HOA even existed." The man with the scanner glanced at the other one and muttered something under his breath. I reached across the seat and grabbed a copy of the court order I kept in my glove box, laminated just in case. "You boys might want to read this before you keep running your mouths. You're looking at a court-certified right-of-way agreement. Judge signed it last November. Says I've got legal protected access through this road, 24/7. The clipboard guy took it, skimmed it briefly, then snorted. "Yeah, well, that order's about the old gate you complained about, right? HOA sold this 30-foot stretch to the community trust. It's now registered as private internal land. That decision doesn't apply here. You're telling me," I said slowly, voice getting lower, "that you moved the gate 30 damn feet and think that makes it legal?" "Not my place to say. That's up to our legal department." "Well, I don't care what your department says. That's the only access road to my home. You can't just block it off like I'm some delivery driver looking for a shortcut." The big one stepped forward, crossing his arms. "Sir, please calm down and reverse your vehicle. We're just following orders." I stared at them. 2 smug grunts in matching polos standing between me and my own front porch. I didn't come from a line of men who liked being told what they can and can't do on land they've worked since the Eisenhower administration. I shifted the truck into park, cut the engine, and stepped out slowly. "You're gonna move, or I'm going to have to involve someone you can't ignore." "Oh." Clipboard guy raised an eyebrow. I gave him a tight smile. "My son, Officer Joshua Reed, County Sheriff's Department." The man with the tablet actually chuckled. "Yeah, call him. Just make sure you back that truck up before someone files a trespassing complaint." "Don't worry," I said. "I'll call." And I'm not backing up an inch. I climbed back into the truck, fuming, and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady. I wasn't rattled. I was furious. I called Josh directly. Told him what just happened, word for word. No dramatics, just facts. He paused for maybe half a second, then said, "I'm on my way. Don't engage with them. Just sit tight." The guards watched me like I was a ticking bomb as I turned the truck around, not to leave, but to meet my son halfway down the road. One of them raised a phone and snapped a picture of my license plate, like I was some kind of criminal. I gave him a little wave. I didn't say another word, just drove 100 yards down the road, parked under an old sycamore, and waited. 5 minutes. 10. The wind moved through the trees with that same rhythm I'd known since I was a boy. Except this time, it wasn't peaceful. It felt like something had shifted, like a fuse had just been lit under Maple Creek Ridge, and someone was about to get burned. Josh pulled up in his cruiser 17 minutes later. That's the kind of son he is. Efficient, dependable, and raised to know when enough is enough. I watched as he parked behind my truck, stepped out in full uniform, and adjusted his duty belt with the quiet calm of a man who'd seen worse than HOA rent-a-cops with inflated egos. He didn't smile, didn't ask me what happened again. He just nodded once, then walked straight toward the gate like he'd done it 100 times. The two guards were still there, arms crossed, waiting like they thought this was over already. One of them muttered something to the other, and I caught a glimpse of the clipboard tucked under his arm, like he thought that piece of paper made him a sheriff. Josh stopped a few feet from the men and produced his badge, calm as a sunrise. Officer Joshua Reed, County Sheriff's Department. This property falls under public easement. I'm investigating an alleged obstruction of legal right-of-way. I'd like to speak to whoever's in charge. Clipboard guy didn't blink. This is private land now. We've been instructed not to allow non-residents through this gate. The section behind us belongs to Maple Creek Ridge HOA. Josh tilted his head slightly. So, you're saying you're knowingly restricting access to a documented right-of-way previously upheld by court order? The court order applies to the old gate, the bigger one said. We've relocated the barrier. This section isn't covered. Josh smiled faintly. That's not how right-of-access law works. Relocating a barrier doesn't erase the access it protects. Who authorized this installation? HOA board, clipboard guy said, now shifting his feet slightly. Josh turned, walked back to his cruiser without another word, and popped the rear hatch. He pulled out his tablet, logged in, and began preparing a report. He stood near the passenger side, screen glowing in the morning light. He was documenting every word, every face, every badge number, because Josh knows how this works. If it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. That's when the bigger one moved. It was subtle at first. He walked toward Josh slowly, hands empty. But as he closed the distance, his voice raised half an octave. Hey, what are you writing there? Let me see that. Josh didn't even look up. Step back, sir. You're interfering with a law enforcement officer. I said, let me see it, the man barked, and then he grabbed Josh by the arm. It wasn't a hard grab, but it was enough. Enough to snap the air. Josh moved fast. He yanked his arm back, drew his sidearm in one motion, and planted his feet. Back up, now, get on the ground, both of you. Hands where I can see them. The other man froze. The one who grabbed Josh took a step back, breathing hard, suddenly realizing he'd miscalculated badly. I watched it all unfold from a few dozen yards away, heart racing, hand inching toward the shotgun I kept behind my seat. But I didn't need it. Josh held steady, gun lowered but ready. You just committed assault on a uniformed officer. I will call this in as a code 911 if you do not comply. Last warning. The two guards hesitated, still trying to process that the uniform in front of them wasn't some mall cop they could push around. Josh didn't wait. He stepped back and reached for the radio on his shoulder. Unit 12 requesting immediate backup. Officer assaulted while documenting obstruction of right-of-way. 2 suspects, 1 attempted disarm. Repeat, code 911 in progress. Clipboard guy's mouth was open, face drained. The big one had gone dead quiet, hands hovering near his sides like he wasn't sure what to do with them. Face down now, Josh ordered again, and this time they listened. By the time he cuffed the first one, I'd already walked back up with my phone out recording. I wasn't saying anything. I didn't need to. The scene said it all. Josh placed the cuffs firmly, then ordered them to remain still while he backed off, gun holstered. His hands were calm, voice level. Not once did he raise it, not even when the second guard started muttering about private enforcement powers and community jurisdiction. 2 minutes later, we heard sirens in the distance. Josh looked over at me, gave a slight nod, and said just loud enough for them to hear, "This road belongs to my father." That's not opinion. That's law. And you just turned a land dispute into a criminal assault on a peace officer. I almost smiled. Almost. The sheriff's cruisers came in hot, 2 of them, lights flashing, no sirens. They pulled in on either side of Josh's unit, kicking up gravel and pine needles as they rolled to a stop. Out stepped Deputies Carmichael and Ortega. Good men, both of them. Ortega was the one who'd helped me track down a busted ATV ring on my property 2 summers back. Carmichael had a poker face made for federal courtrooms. Together, they made the kind of entrance that told you trouble had just grown legs and started walking. Josh briefed them in under 60 seconds. Calm, measured, exact. Ortega knelt beside the two handcuffed men, double-checking the restraints. Carmichael started recording body cam footage as he scanned their IDs and weapons permits, then radioed in the incident with codes I only half understood. I stood off to the side, leaning against my truck, arms folded. I wasn't interfering, but I was watching every second, just like the 3 other HOA residents now clustered by the tree line, phones out, whispering like they were filming a wildlife documentary. Clipboard guy, whose name turned out to be Marshall Keene, was squirming under Ortega's grip. "This is a mistake," he kept muttering. "We were just following orders. That officer overreacted." "You laid hands on a peace officer during lawful duty," Ortega said. "That's not up for debate. That's a felony." "I didn't know he was writing a report," the big guy, now identified as Curtis Blake, added. "He just looked like he was taking notes." Carmichael turned toward him. "And that gave you the right to approach and physically touch him, while armed." Blake didn't answer. I could see the color draining from both their faces now. It wasn't just that they were caught. It was dawning on them that someone had lied to them, someone on the HOA board, and now they were the ones bleeding for it. One of the deputies read them their Miranda rights. No yelling, no drama, just steel and routine. While this unfolded, a 4th vehicle arrived, a dark SUV, civilian plates. A woman stepped out wearing a blazer too tight for the heat and a haircut too sharp for compassion. I recognized her from a distance. Karen Bird, president of the Maple Creek Ridge HOA. Of course. She stormed toward the scene, ignoring me completely, her heels stabbing into the gravel with every step. "What is going on here?" she barked. "Why are my officers in handcuffs? Who's in charge?" Josh turned slowly. "I am. Officer Reed, Sheriff's Department. You are?" "Karen Bird, HOA president. These men work for us, and you're trespassing on private land. This is our access gate. You're interfering with security enforcement." "No," Josh said. "They're interfering with a legally protected access road. Your gate is obstructing a court-ordered servitude, and one of your men just grabbed a sheriff's deputy while on duty." "That's not a misunderstanding. That's assault on law enforcement." Karen's face twisted like she'd sucked on a lemon. "This is outrageous. We have a right to protect our community." Josh didn't blink. "And he has a right to reach his own home." I stepped forward now slowly. "You remember the court ruling, Karen. You lost. You were ordered to take down the original gate. Instead, you moved it 30 feet and thought that would hold up?" She pointed a manicured finger at me. "You don't get to dictate how we handle internal property. That gate is on HOA land." Ortega interrupted. "That HOA land intersects with an easement that pre-exists your community by about 50 years. You blocked it. You assigned armed guards to enforce it. One of them committed felony battery. You really want to test this in front of a judge again?" Karen faltered. She looked at the deputies, at the cuffs, at the neighbors still filming from the edge of the woods. Her voice dropped half an octave. "Let's all take a breath and de-escalate." Josh didn't budge. "We've already done that. The suspects are in custody. The report is filed, and backup has been called in because your private road just became a crime scene." Karen turned white. Carmichael got back on the radio. "Dispatch, confirm transport en route. 2 suspects detained. Officer assault, securing perimeter, roadway access compromised by unauthorized installation." I watched her then. The mask dropped just enough to see the panic underneath, but she wasn't done. Karen always had one last card to play. I just didn't know yet that it would come at me sideways, through threats, lawsuits, and a deeper mess than I'd ever planned to step into. But for now, the cuffs stayed on. The guards stayed silent. And the road to my home stayed blocked. They took the guards away just before noon. A second SUV with transport cages rolled in, and both Marshall and Blake were escorted in silence, eyes down, faces pale. I stood off to the side as it happened, arms crossed, not saying a word. I didn't need to. The law spoke plenty loud this time. Karen stood planted like a statue by the patrol vehicles, arms stiff, lips pressed so tight they disappeared. Her phone had been out for the past 20 minutes, tapping, swiping, snapping photos of everything like she thought she was building a case. More likely, she was just gathering ammo for whatever legal tantrum was coming next. As the last cruiser pulled away, Josh walked back toward me, tablet in hand, still logging details. His face was calm, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "I'll be filing everything today," he said. "They assaulted a deputy, obstructed access, and ignored a standing court order. This isn't just a scuffle anymore, Dad. It's criminal obstruction. I figured as much, I said. They've been building to this. Karen approached, heels crunching over gravel. Mr. Reed, she said icily, we're going to be reviewing this entire incident with our legal team. This road segment is under HOA management. Your use of it has become disruptive, even hostile. My use? I barked a short laugh. I live at the damn end of it. There's no use. It's the only way to my house. You know that. You knew that when you put up the new gate. She ignored that. We'll also be filing a trespass complaint against your son. His conduct today was aggressive, inappropriate, and put 2 of my security officers in danger. Josh didn't flinch. I followed protocol. I was assaulted. I de-escalated without injury. That's more than your team can say. Karen narrowed her eyes, then turned and walked back to her SUV. You'll be hearing from our counsel. She slammed the door so hard the vehicle shook and peeled off in a cloud of smugness and dust. Josh exhaled. This isn't over, you know that, right? Was it ever? I muttered. That night, I parked the truck behind my workshop instead of in the open. I double-checked my trail cams, replaced one near the front gate, and put up a new motion sensor floodlight at the turnoff. Just a precaution, but around here, precautions were just part of surviving HOA madness. Next morning, I came outside to find both rear tires on my truck flattened, not low, slashed. The knife marks were clean, deliberate. This wasn't bad luck. I stood there for a moment, taking in the scene. Then I walked back inside and poured myself a fresh cup of coffee. I didn't rush. I'd seen this playbook before. Once the coffee was in hand, I stepped into the office and called my lawyer. Her name's Marlene Copeland, and she's got the energy of a pissed-off border collie with a law degree. She'd helped me win the first case against the HOA a few years back, and when she picked up this time, she didn't even say hello. What the hell did they do now? I told her everything. The new gate, the assault, the arrests, the tires. There was silence on the other end for a second, then a long, drawn-out sigh. Okay. We're filing 2 things today. 1, a motion for contempt of court for violating the prior order. 2, a civil suit for obstruction, sabotage, and intentional infliction of emotional and financial harm. We'll name the HOA, Karen Bird personally, and, if we get what I think we will in discovery, the entire board. And if they escalate, we escalate harder. By the time the sun went down, the paperwork was already in process. But Karen wasn't done either. The following day, I found a certified letter shoved into my mailbox, stamped with HOA branding, legal phrasing thick enough to choke a lawyer. Inside was a notice of conditional easement review. According to their letter, the HOA was undertaking a full reassessment of all community-facing access agreements due to increased disruption and safety concerns. Translation: they were trying to invalidate my easement by pushing a manufactured safety review process. Josh came by that evening, glanced at the letter, and shook his head. This is retaliation, plain and simple. You're not the one breaking the law, they are. And yet here we are, I said, again. That night, as I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon and a loaded 12-gauge within reach, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd only scratched the surface. Karen wasn't done. She never stopped with gates or signs or warnings. She had a board, a budget, and now, something personal, and I had a lawsuit, 2 flat tires, and a slow-burning rage in my chest that hadn't cooled since the first day they tried to take my land. 3 days after receiving the so-called notice of conditional easement review, I came home from a trip to the county assessor's office to find something even more absurd than a slashed tire. A survey crew was standing near the edge of my driveway, clipboard, high-vis vests, and tripods with laser scopes. One of them was hammering a wooden stake into the gravel near my mailbox. Another was taking photos of the new floodlight I had mounted on the tree, and all of them were wearing badges that said HOA Property Evaluation Team. I parked the truck fast, got out, and approached calmly. "Excuse me," I said, arms folded. "What are you doing on my land?" One of them, a wiry guy with a sunburned neck and a clipboard, turned around like I'd interrupted a sacred ritual. "This is part of a recalibration initiative requested by the HOA. We're verifying boundary lines in response to a new security perimeter expansion request." "You're what?" "Expanding the security perimeter. You should have received a notice." "This is standard operating." "You're standing on my land," I said slowly. "And you didn't ask for permission. You're trespassing." "Sir, we were told this was common area under HOA management." I pointed down at the gravel. That common area is listed under my parcel number at the county clerk's office. You're standing on land that I pay taxes for. So if I don't see you and your team off my property in 60 seconds, the next people you'll be talking to wear badges and don't work for Karen." They left. Not fast, not slow, just stiffly, like they thought leaving too quickly would admit guilt. But the message was clear. They were trying to reframe the geography, literally rewrite the map beneath my boots. I called Marlene immediately. She didn't hesitate. "Send me photos of the stakes and any HOA paperwork that mentions boundary reassessment. This smells like pretext. If they're trying to force a survey to invalidate your easement or fabricate a land dispute, we can bury them in court." By the end of that day, she had filed an emergency cease and desist letter and demanded a copy of the HOA's survey request. Authorization. They didn't respond. But 2 days later, a stranger knocked on my door. He wore khakis, a tucked-in shirt, and a smile that looked surgically implanted. "Hi there, I'm Kyle Truman, External Conflict Resolution Specialist for Maple Creek Ridge HOA. Karen thought it might be helpful if we had a conversation. Off the record, of course." I looked him up and down. "You sent a PR guy to do cleanup?" "I'm a certified mediator," he replied with a too smooth tone. "I specialize in resolving land use disputes before they escalate into litigation." I held the door open without inviting him in. "We're already past that stage." He laughed lightly. "Surely we can come to some mutual agreement. I mean, the gate can stay. Perhaps you get an exclusive access code." "There's a court order that says otherwise." He pulled out a folder and flipped it open, revealing printed aerial maps with red lines, highlighted zones, and dotted borders. "All we're asking is to reconsider the dimensions of the existing easement. Given community growth projections and increased vehicle traffic, a security checkpoint at the turnoff makes sense, don't you think?" "Let me ask you something, Kyle. If I put a chain across your driveway and made you call me every time you wanted to leave for work, would you be open to negotiation?" His face twitched. "That's not a fair comparison." "No, it's exactly fair. That road is my right, not a privilege, not a favor from Karen. I'm not interested in deals. I'm interested in keeping what's legally mine." He put the folder away, voice dropping a bit. "You're really not willing to compromise? Get off my porch." That night, someone smashed my mailbox. Not a random swing, not teenage vandalism. They took a sledgehammer to it, bent the post, left the HOA letter still stuffed in the box, torn in half, and shoved into the dirt next to it. I reported it, of course. Deputies came, took photos, filed a vandalism report. Nothing conclusive, no prints. But I knew it wasn't random. This wasn't about the road anymore. It wasn't even about land. This was about control. Karen and her HOA goons had gotten used to playing Queen of the Hill, and someone like me refusing to bow just didn't sit right. Now they were testing how far they could push before I snapped. But I wasn't going to snap. I was going to document, respond, and wait. Because what Karen didn't know was that we were gathering evidence for a much bigger case. One that wouldn't just put her presidency at risk. It could put her in handcuffs. 2 mornings later, I got a call from Marlene before I'd even had my coffee. Her tone was clipped, urgent. "Owen, you need to check the county plat map, now." I pulled it up on my desktop. My parcel, Lot 34A, looked the same at first glance. But then I saw it. A new dotted overlay ran straight across my driveway, marked Provisional Community Access Corridor, PCAC. What the hell is this? They submitted a proposed amendment to the zoning board. They're trying to redesignate your driveway as a shared-use corridor under some bogus clause buried in an old county plan. "They can't do that," I said, my voice low and flat. "That land is deeded. It's not shared." "That's not stopping them," she replied. "This is an old trick. They submit a request, hope no one notices, and if it's on the books long enough without objection, it gets rubber stamped. I've already filed an emergency injunction, but we're going to need to appear at the next hearing, 3 days from now." That day, I drove down to the county office in person, walked right up to the zoning clerk's desk, and demanded a copy of every document tied to the application. Sure enough, Karen's signature was on the request, along with 2 board members I'd never even met. It was a full-blown land grab, dressed up in bureaucratic language. And it got worse. On my way back home, I noticed something strange at the edge of the tree line by the gate. 2 orange survey flags and fresh tire tracks cutting into the soft dirt. I followed them. About 60 feet off the road, I found a plastic irrigation line half buried and snaking toward a junction box, one that was clearly marked Maple Creek HOA Utility. They had extended infrastructure onto my land, without notice, without consent, and definitely without permits. That night, I sent Josh the photos, then walked the whole perimeter with a flashlight. I found 2 more junction boxes hidden in the brush. The next day, we had a drone out scanning the property. What it saw from the air made my stomach twist. They hadn't just laid lines. They had built a looped irrigation system that fed into their new park area, across the edge of my vineyard, siphoning water from my pump line and discharging runoff across my soil. When Marlene saw the footage, she almost lost it. "They've committed environmental trespass, water theft, and illegal excavation," she said. "This is felony level Owen. We're done playing nice." By the next morning, she had filed 4 separate suits: unlawful land use, easement tampering, theft of utility resources, and environmental damages. And that wasn't all. We requested a full court-ordered property inspection with law enforcement present. The county sheriff's office scheduled it for the following Thursday. Karen, of course, wasn't taking it lying down. The day after we filed, she sent out a community-wide newsletter accusing me of threatening HOA safety, interfering with vital community improvements, and abusing legal resources for personal vendettas. Then came the kicker. She announced an emergency HOA vote to reclassify community access policy zones, including a ballot proposal to permanently annex my driveway. It was absurd. It wasn't even legal, but she was banking on ignorance and groupthink. The mailboxes along Maple Creek were suddenly filled with flyers, maps, and emotionally charged nonsense about how I was blocking children from using community space and hoarding land that belonged to the neighborhood spirit. I knew what this was. It wasn't about roads, irrigation, or landlines anymore. It was a coordinated smear campaign designed to isolate me and rally pressure from clueless residents who didn't even know the law was on my side. But I wasn't going to play defense. I was about to go public. I contacted a local investigative journalist, Kendra Rios, who had previously exposed a corrupt zoning board scandal 2 years earlier. I sent her the maps, the drone footage, the fake survey files, even Karen's letter. Her reply was short and sharp. "I'm in." By the end of the week, a full expose titled HOA or Hostile Occupation Landowner Speaks Out was scheduled to go live. The board didn't know it yet, but their ward just stepped into a much bigger battlefield. The article dropped at exactly 9 a.m. on Monday. Kendra didn't hold back. She detailed everything: the forged survey requests, the illegal irrigation system, the zoning manipulation attempt, and even the HOA's smear tactics. The headline was brutal: "Private property targeted by HOA empire. Where does it end?" By noon, the county zoning board's office was flooded with phone calls. Local talk radio picked up the story within hours. Online forums lit up. People were angry, not just for me, but for what it represented. And then came the fallout. First, the county sheriff's department confirmed they would be attending the property inspection in full uniform. That was unusual. Normally, inspections were dry affairs, but this one was shaping up to be something else entirely. Second, 2 members of the HOA board resigned that evening. Their names had appeared in Kendra's article, and they clearly didn't want to be dragged down with Karen. Karen, on the other hand, doubled down. The next morning, I saw a new sign posted at the front gate of Maple Creek Ridge, right next to my own property marker. It read, "Notice: entry to Maple Creek Ridge subject to community code and oversight. Non-compliant access may result in enforcement." Underneath, in small print, was some nonsense about active easement adjudication. I tore it down myself. I had barely walked back to the house when the HOA sent their version of a SWAT team. 3 private patrol officers in HOA polos, armed with clipboards and body cams, standing on the gravel just outside my gate. One of them barked through a megaphone, "Mr. Etchison, this is official notice that your vehicle must be relocated. You are in violation of pending access revisions. You have 10 minutes to comply." I walked out slowly, holding my phone in plain view and recording. "You're standing on private land. I don't recognize your authority. Neither does the county. This is your last warning to leave before I report you for criminal trespass." The leader, stocky guy with mirrored sunglasses, shifted uncomfortably. "We have the right to enforce HOA codes." "On HOA land," I replied. "This isn't yours." I didn't back down. And they didn't want to be the ones who got cuffed. They left, but that wasn't the end of it. 2 hours later, a police cruiser pulled into my driveway. Now, this wasn't the sheriff's office, it was city police. The officer stepped out, looked uneasy, and told me there'd been a disturbance call. From where? I asked. Caller didn't identify themselves, he said, but they claimed there was a violent confrontation at this address involving threats and unauthorized surveillance. He clearly didn't want to be here. I showed him the security footage. Calm, clean, and very much in my favor. He nodded. Looks like someone's playing games. I'll note it as a false report. By the time he left, it was obvious Karen was escalating toward harassment and abuse of emergency services. That night, my lawyer Marlene emailed me something heavy, a motion for a full restraining order against Karen and any HOA enforcement agents. She'd already lined up affidavits from neighbors, screenshots of the megaphone incident, and all the documentation we'd compiled over the past month. The hearing would be held in 3 days. But things didn't wait that long to spiral. The day before the inspection, at 5:17 a.m., my motion sensor lights lit up, and my cameras caught 2 people digging near the junction box behind the vineyard. They wore black hoodies, gloves, and moved fast. I hit the panic button and called 911. By the time the deputies arrived, the saboteurs had fled, but they left behind a busted valve, severed irrigation tubing, and a crowbar. We filed an official criminal complaint that morning, and the footage, crystal clear. Karen's husband was one of them. Now, it wasn't just HOA conflict. It was felony vandalism, trespassing, and conspiracy. And tomorrow's inspection wasn't going to be a simple walk-around anymore. It was going to be a scene. The morning of the inspection, I was up before the sun. I stood on my porch with a thermos of coffee in one hand and a copy of the restraining order paperwork in the other. This wasn't just about boundary disputes anymore. It had become something darker, something personal, and today was the day it ended. At precisely 9 a.m., 2 sheriff's deputies rolled up in a black and white. Behind them came a county zoning official, a property assessor, a civil engineer, and 2 environmental compliance officers. 10 minutes later, Marlene arrived, followed by Josh, who had brought a topographic drone team with high-resolution sensors. This wasn't just a property inspection, it was an audit with teeth. Karen showed up 20 minutes late. She pulled up in her white Mercedes SUV, wearing oversized sunglasses and a ridiculous wide-brimmed hat like she was arriving at a tennis club. Her husband wasn't with her. He was already facing felony charges and had been advised by his lawyer to stay away. Karen walked up to the gate, looked at the deputies, and with a tight little smirk said, "This is all unnecessary." That smirk vanished when Marlene handed her the temporary restraining order, signed by a judge that very morning. Karen wasn't even allowed to set foot beyond the entrance. She screamed, loud, claimed it was a violation of her leadership rights. One of the deputies just calmly said, "Ma'am, take one more step and you'll be in cuffs." She backed off, but not quietly. We began the inspection. It was devastating. The environmental team documented multiple violations. The illegal irrigation system had diverted natural runoff, caused minor soil erosion, and introduced chemical contaminants from improperly installed piping. The civil engineer confirmed structural tampering with my access road, citing evidence of unauthorized grading and backfill along the edge. The zoning officer took one look at the HOA's fake community access overlay on their map and said, "This isn't just bad paperwork. This is fraud." Josh's drone footage was the final nail. From the sky, you could see the full extent of what they'd tried to hide. Unauthorized pipelines, trench scars, valve points, and even electrical boxes half buried on my land, all routed to serve HOA facilities. I didn't have to say a word. The officials said it for me. Within hours, the county filed formal criminal charges against Karen and 2 remaining board members. Multiple counts: environmental destruction, property fraud, conspiracy, and abuse of zoning mechanisms. Karen's HOA president status was revoked pending court judgment. But it didn't stop there. Civil court ruled in my favor within 2 weeks. The HOA was fined $1.4 million in damages, enough to bankrupt them twice over. A judge ordered a full injunction barring any further access, construction, or resource use on my land. The Maple Creek HOA lost legal control over 3 shared zones, which reverted back to the county pending reassignment. Karen herself? She was sentenced to 12 years in state prison, 5 without parole. Her husband took a plea deal and got 6. When the gavel came down, Marlene turned to me and whispered, "Well, I guess HOA stands for hell of an outcome now." I didn't laugh. I just drove home, pulled my gate shut behind me, and installed a brand new 20-foot metal sign. Private land. Trespassers will be prosecuted, including HOAs. No one from Maple Creek has set foot on my land since. And that's exactly how it's going to stay.